Hi there, and just before we have a look at this live lesson today, I do just want to add like a big caveat to it. The way we do it in geography is we do look at it from a very scientific point of view for the effects of climate change. We literally look at everything that happens. And for some of those things, they are positive. There are nicer things about the weather getting hotter. Like there are people who are really excited about that and really happy about that. However, and just because it's such a negative time, I have chosen to focus in a bit more for this topic because it is normally a bit gloomy doing climate change because there is a lot of apprehension about the fact there's nothing we can do. So can you please keep that in mind when looking through that while there are positives, they in absolutely no way make it worthwhile for the amount of bad things that are actually going to happen because of climate change. Sea level rise is going to displace and could kill millions of people around the globe over the next kind of coming decades. So there is, just because you might get a sunny day, or your food prices might become slightly cheaper in some countries, then there's no way that really equates to the same thing. So just have awareness of that when you're going through this lesson. And I'll link a NASA link below where they've done a really good connection with how bad sea level is despite the fact you can't see it. So I hope you enjoy the lesson. Just a wee caveat for that, and I'll speak to you later. So today we're having a look at the effects of climate change. We did this through kind of two parts where we looked at the effects locally and the effects globally. But I'm just going to kind of combine the two of these together in kind of one short way and look at the atrophic poem method of doing it. So we're going to have a look at the local effects of climate change and put with that we're going to look at the global effects and are they always negative. So if you've done the work already, you'll maybe know some of the answers to these, but it might give you a bit more of a context as we have a look through. So as I said, we're going to go through with this method of using this effects. So when you kind of tend to get a question on wait and see if that for uploads. When you tend to get a question on climate change, you'll be like, what are the effects are, or what are the impacts are? So in the question itself, you've then got a hint as to what you might need to put in your answer. And a detailed one of each of these will give you 7, 8, 9, 10 marks without really breaking a sweat, but just explaining each individual one. So this is a really good way to revise and to learn things so that you can hopefully kind of get those different ideas in. So the first one is extreme weather. So people use this a lot. They just say, we're going to get worse weather through climate change, but we don't really understand what we mean. Well, one of the things where that is tropical storms. This pen is huge. Let's maybe make it a bit smaller. I'm also aware it is kind of fudging, going a bit blurry in the middle. Don't know why that is. Maybe it's just the internet. So tropical storms really happen in this boundary here, where we can see all the kind of orange, really just above and just below the equator. They need for those that did Nat 5 and did this, they need a sea temperature of above 27 degrees Celsius to actually exist in the first place. If the global temperature goes up, what happens to this boundary is it starts getting bigger. Let's go red green. So it starts going, maybe they might get tropical storms further up. That's not a great colour either. Let's go with gold. So then we start getting more tropical storms that exist further and further apart. And we might even then, if it gets warm enough, get tropical storms up at us. So this increasing of sea temperature will create more tropical storms to happen. The other big thing we have for F is farming. Farming is going to be really badly affected by climate change in two ways. So you can have positive effects and negative effects. So the one we included in our lesson was looking at the change in American farming. So this one has it in a lot more of a global scale. And red, orange tends to show areas that have worse productivity, so they're producing less food, and the green will show areas that are having better food. So, and this is one thing to try and remember about this entire topic, is that if I took a picture of like the really kind of like, they tend to be the poorer areas of the world, the areas that didn't have a lot of food anyway and don't have a lot of food security, they would actually maybe match up with this. It's a bit outdated, and we'll talk to that later on in the development course, but this tends to be the line of developed countries and developing countries. In there. So when you have the developing countries that are getting less productivity in farming, you can see that the impact on them is going to be a lot greater. And who benefits from climate change? It's going to be us here, North America, Norway, that's Kazakhstan. So all Europe also having positive increases in their productivity. So really the countries that benefit from climate change for farming are the people that don't really need the benefit, and the people that lose out are the people who are like disadvantaged anyway. But we'll come back to this in a minute. The other F for our effects is flooding, where we have more flooding that happens. And it's not just because the sea level's higher, so that pushes like tidal rivers further in. Tidal rivers are things like the Firth of Forth, where a lot of it is affected, the height of the river is affected by the tide. So that's sea level. But why might the Devon be more likely to flood? Because in hot water or in hot air, the atmosphere can hold a lot more rain. If it can then hold a lot more rain, the clouds are bigger. And when the clouds are bigger and they come in, they drop a lot more rain at the one time. And the rivers and banks are not used to this, so they swell up. And we got a lot more what's called surface runoff down the river. And then places that are not used to dealing with it, they've got really low shallow banks like here, will then just start to burst and not be able to cope very well, simply because the clouds are bigger and more moisture can be held in the atmosphere because it's warmer, because we've got this generally warmer climate. Has it worked? Yes, it has. Now, the other E I like to put in is the economy. The economy is one of these things that we hear quite a lot about in terms of our current virus. Bizarrely, I can't say it because this is going on YouTube and it'll classify it in a different way. But here again, we have an impact map that shows the countries that have actually benefited from climate change and countries that have lost out. Now, if we look back at our farming map, let's move a bit far out. Do we notice anything similar? That the countries that have lost out tend to be, actually going that way, the same countries down here. So there's quite a few. There's similar in terms of like America, Australia, but again, the countries that tend to have lost out are in the southern hemisphere and are struggling anyway, and the countries that have benefited, Canada, Europe, Russia, Kazakhstan, Mongolia. Again, it's us in the northern countries that don't tend to need any kind of extra benefit to our civilization compared to other people. So an economy really gets affected because when you've got more flooding, you have to build flood defences. They cost a lot of money. When you have bad weather, you get food droughts, food shortages. So you then have to pay more money to import food from like China or America. If you have bad dry seasons, or like Australia had forest fires, you have to spend money putting those out or dealing with infrastructure problems. The other side is if you have nice weather or slightly improved weather like we would have in the UK, then you can grow more food. So more money. If you have slightly nicer weather, you might get more tourists. And even worse, when we're talking about sea level rise, we are then talking about refugees. So people that would leave the most badly hit areas, looking around here, up in Bangladesh, and then move to other parts of the world that are not so badly hit. And the people that tend to move first, when we look at population topic, we'll see that tends to be the more affluent, the more well-off people who move first because they've got the means to do this. All of these things affecting the economy and the money we've got. So we've had extreme weather, farming, flooding, economy, and cold-related deaths. Similar to us in Europe, we're benefiting from increased farming, we're benefiting from increased economy because we're going to have nicer weather. This is the other big thing that actually kind of benefits in Europe, is because it's warmer, we have milder winters. Milder winters mean less ice. Less ice means less slips, trips and falls. And while it's maybe not a lot, it is definitely an impact there where people are maybe a little bit safer. It means that cars are less likely to skid and have car accidents. And even there, heating will be less. And if heating costs less, it means that people aren't putting themselves in a position where they can't afford to heat their houses, which is a real problem for certain parts of our country, that people really struggle in the winter to keep their homes warm. So, and it could be a massive impact. Every year, cold-related deaths account for 55 to 50% of the deaths in our country. It depends on how bad the winter's been. However, the one maybe I haven't mentioned there, I'm doing a lot of positives. Really shouldn't make climate change seem so nice, because it's really not that nice. Because the other thing we've got is this though, that malaria is a real problem for parts of Africa. Let's just shake it all red. And again, malaria is something we'll learn a bit more about in the development health topic, but malaria requires temperatures of 16 degrees Celsius for mosquitoes. Is this going to come back? Yeah, there we go. For mosquitoes to live. And the warmer it gets in Europe, the warmer it gets further up north, then those mosquitoes are going to move north into Europe. So we're going to see more diseases from vectors. Vectors are like transmitters, like mosquitoes. I am aware it's going a bit blurry. Hopefully it's just going to be glitching and then go back away. But I've only got one to do. So there are negatives to this as well. But it's an aside. I just realised I went really positive for a lot of things, which is not the case. I did quite a lot. We did quite a big section of this in the lesson, so I'm not really going to go into too much. If it comes through, is thermal expansion. Thermal expansion is literally just this idea that when things get warmer, they take up more space. And this is appropriate for sea level. So the warmer the planet gets, the higher the sea level gets, and eventually it will burst out and start flooding the landscape. So here we go, massive negative, because there are around about 1 billion people live near the coast or live within 1 meter height of the coast. So a 1 meter sea level rise will mean that 1 billion people around the world are displaced from their homes. There you go. So there are some small positives for some parts of the world, but you've got to really contrast that against the massive impact that this is going to have on people. And finally, because just to end, to keep you nice and positive, maybe I've just went really positive because it's such a gloomy world at the moment, that ski holidays and sun holidays are obviously changing. that Scotland has had some of the worst ski seasons in the last couple of years. That their ski industry is really struggling. Last year was the worst it's been, and I imagine this year is going to be even worse for other reasons, that we're not really going to have the same impact of ski holidays, and it could see the ski industry here almost become non-existent or become really, really difficult or really expensive to do. The contrast of that is that as it gets warmer, places like this might become a lot busier, because people are like, I don't need to go to Spain to get my summer sun and get a decent tan. I can just go to Banff Links, catch some rays on the beach, and it costs me nothing. Aside from the fact we can't travel right now, this is one of the big things where it could actually happen. We do have some lovely beaches in Scotland, and just with a bit of sun, they become really nice. And this stay-at-home summer, or staycation, as people refuse to, or not refuse, or decide actually it's worth more of my money to stay here, is the reason that Thomas Cook gave for going out of business. So Thomas Cook basically highlighted that a really positive summer one year was the reason that they failed to get a lot of money for flights, and that they are then subsequently out of business. And there are days, this is where I'm from, this is the beach at a place called Troon, which is a 40-minute train journey from Glasgow, that get absolutely packed on summer days in Scotland. So you can just see, and the amount of mess that they left after this is really bothering to locals, which we will pick up in the coast topic about the impact that land users have on certain areas. So this is the kind of main effects. If we kind of go back out and have a quick look just to finish off, that highlighting those different ideas, so those using that word effects, means that you can detail each one in. I'm waiting on this catching up and then not becoming blurry. That you can detail each one in, give an explanation to each one, and then pick up 1 or 2 marks for each comment, and there we go. It'll be like 14 marks worth from our effects, and you wouldn't tend to get much more of a question with more marks worth than that. So that is me. Apologies for it being really blurry today. As I say, there has been problems with Teams in the last couple of days, and I don't know what it is. I've been kind of waiting for this to sort out.